there will be a parade of these miserable Upper East Side zealots that have a lot of money, the lords of easy money, connected to Wall Street, hedge fund, titans of all sorts of industry.
Larry David is increasingly the target of right-wingers because Larry David doesn't give an F anymore. And he is straight up saying, the Trumpists are disgusting. I don't care if they don't like my show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Go away. You make no difference to me. And this is really riling up a lot of right-wingers, including Charlie Kirk. Now, this is going to be a very instructive clip that I'm going to play. I've talked before about right-wing anti-Semitism and left-wing anti-Semitism. There's lots of anti-Semitism across the political spectrum. I'm going to give you an example here of right-wing anti-Semitism, which is just typical playing on Jewish tropes of Jews all being complaining Woody Allen types. And that's literally what Charlie Kirk says about Larry David. Now, I just want to remind you, the reason that they are so angry with Larry David, you know, season 1, 2, 3 of Curb, far less political. It was funny. Larry David's hilarious. Seinfeld. We love it. Now that Larry David is becoming much more political as the show winds down, Curb Your Enthusiasm, now they're furious. Now he's not funny. And now Charlie Kirk is playing up anti-Semitic tropes. Take a listen and then we'll discuss this.
Man, he's really lost his fastball. That's Larry David, who used to be a really funny guy. People would ask, Charlie, do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? I never liked Larry David.
Right.
He is not the brains of the operation of Seinfeld. It's obviously Jerry or somebody else. He's a baby. He's sick. Larry David, you perfectly just showed us exactly what is going on tonight at this New York fundraiser. This is the Upper East crew. Tonight, around 4 or 5 p.m., you might as well just close down the streets. There will be a parade of these miserable Upper East Side zealots that have a lot of money. The lords of easy money, connected to Wall Street, hedge fund, titans of all sorts of industry. And they're just going to go right down Park Avenue. They're going to go right down Fifth Avenue to the New York City Radio Hall to have in their own mind a religious experience. Tonight is essentially group therapy. Tonight is essentially $100,000, $250,000 for group therapy. Be among the other mentally deranged people in New York that live very shallow lives. You know what's really interesting is it's obvious that ever since Donald Trump came on the scene, Larry David is not as happy of a person as he once was. He's really never been that happy. I think he's an atheist. He's snarky. He's your typical kind of New York Woody Allen type that is constantly complaining and is, thinks he could be really funny. By the way, that clip, he's a baby.
These are all coded anti-Semitic tropes. Every single one of them. Every single one. So this is a great opportunity to talk about right-wing anti-Semitism versus left-wing anti-Semitism. There is overlap between the two, but they are different. Right-wing anti-Semitism is often much more ethno-nationalist. It's rooted in either white supremacy or white nationalist ideologies. The idea that Jews are an other, they threaten racial purity, they threaten national purity. It's more Nazi-like. Right-wing anti-Semitism is more traditionally Nazi-like. The conspiracy theories from the right-wing anti-Semites tend to be about, sometimes they call it Zog, Zionist-occupied government, or a conspiracy for Jewish control of the world, including specific industries, as Charlie Kirk alludes, titans of industry and Wall Street and this and that. Holocaust denial tends to be right-wing anti-Semitism, either denying altogether or diminishing the severity of the Holocaust in order to undermine Jewish history and suffering. There are also cultural preservation claims. We saw this like when I interviewed Richard Spencer, where Jews, some of them might pass as white people, but Jews undermine traditional values and national identity and cultural homogeneity, and then religious bigotry is often there as well. Now, it's important to know a lot of the anti-Semitism against Jews, left and right, is not religiously oriented. Jews are an ethno-religious group, so there may be religious bigotry, but there may not be. Now, on the other hand, we have left-wing anti-Semitism. Left-wing anti-Semitism often is shrouded in a critique of so-called global capitalism, blaming Jews for the problems associated with capitalism, the financial crises, economic inequality. It draws on stereotypes of Jewish greed or control. Again, overlap with the right. The right doesn't criticize capitalism. The left will sometimes criticize capitalism and include in that, entrench in that, left-wing anti-Semitism. Cultural and institutional power tropes. The left-wing anti-Semites will sometimes allege, oh, Jews have disproportionate influence in politics and media and other power structures. Similar to the right, but different. It's its own thing. And an interesting one that's exclusive to left-wing anti-Semitism is the misuse of intersectionality. We saw this with the Women's March. We've seen it with Black Lives Matter to a degree. Leftist circles that talk about intersectionality, but say, oh, no. Jewish issues are minimized or ignored altogether because of perceived Jewish privilege. So Jewish strife is often marginalized or dismissed by left-wing anti-Semitism within the social justice movements. And then also sometimes we see a moral double standard when it comes to American Jews from the left-wing anti-Semites. You often see this with regard to Israel, painting American Jews with the brush of Israeli domestic policy and demanding answers and denouncements and this sort of thing. Something that when the right does it with Muslims, left-wingers correctly criticize it, then they apply it to Jews. So important to understand Charlie Kirk's example here, classic right-wing anti-Semitism. We also have left-wing anti-Semitism, overlap, but certainly two different categories. Many in the audience know my first language is Spanish. I learned English later when I moved to the United States. And these days I do a fair amount of traveling, and I always make an effort to learn some of the new language before I get to the country. I've tried a bunch of methods for this. I keep coming back to the app Babbel, because with Babbel, you really can start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for classes or fooling yourself with language apps that are basically just simple games, Babbel is designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babbel's tools are approachable. They are rooted in real-life situations. They're delivered with conversation-based teaching. You might have seen on my Instagram, I was recently in France. Babbel got me ready last minute. I got to France. I was ready to order food, ask for directions, talk to people at stores and hotels without having to use my phone to translate. There are studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others that continue to prove that Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is like a semester of that language at college. With over 10 million subscriptions sold, Babbel is real language learning for real conversations. My audience gets 55% off, 55, at babbel.com/Pacman. Rules and restrictions may apply. The link is down below.